Bessies, it's Sarah. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing my annual video where I tell you the absolute worst books I read this year. On this list, I have 11 books. I've split them up into two sections. The first section is going to be books that I subjected myself to. I knew that I probably wasn't going to like them, but I read them anyway. And then the second section is going to be books that I genuinely went in wanting to enjoy, but the author fumbled the bag and I hated it. So the first book we're going to talk about is Stalking Adeline by H.D. Carlton. I read this for a dark romance vlog, and a dark romance it is indeed. I've actually come up with alternative titles for each of these books. So the alternative title for Stalking Adeline is Seek Help, and this is a message to you if you enjoyed this book. So this girl follows our main character, Adeline, who is a thinly veiled self-insert of H.D. Carlton because she is a self-published author girl boss. At the very start of the book, she is at an author signing, and our other main character, Zaid, stumbles upon her photo, and he goes into the bookstore and he sees her and he's like, I must have this woman. But he's not normal. He's not gonna go up to her and be like, hey, could I have your number? No, he's like, what if I started stalking her? And every night I stood outside her house and I sent her creepy notes and severed hands and roses without the thorns on them because I'm soft-hearted, even though I'm a creepy stalker, and I've literally put surveillance cameras all over her house. And then I will also essay her even when she says no. I do understand that this book is exploring non-consent as a kink. So if this is your kink, this might be the book for you, because the whole time that Adeline's like, no, get away from me, I'm so scared. She's also like, what if you kept going? She's always just a profuse fountain from her nether regions whenever this man is stalking her and doing very scary things. Like at one point, he takes a loaded gun and sticks it where the sun don't shine. My issue is that it's not that dark topics can't be compelling, because they can't. I think it's the fact that H.D. Carlton just simply does not have the skills to pull off this story. And also what really annoys me is that H.D. Carlton went out of her way to make sure that Zaid had some redeemable qualities by making him someone who hunts down sex traffickers and people who hurt children during the day. Like, that's his day job. But then he is doing the same sort of things to Adeline. So it's a little bit confusing, and I am concerned for the girlies who liked this book. Like, I have seen some reviews that keep me up at night. Okay, the next book we're going to talk about is Mafia Mistress by Mila Finelli. The alternative title for this book is I Want to Suck Your Tits, because the guy who did the Italian accent in this book, he should actually go to jail. I'm gonna play you a soundbite so you can understand what this man sounded like.
Dio, how I would love to fuck those tits. Stop. She's marrying your son.
Listen, let's be upfront and just say that I am not a fan of age gap romance. Like, there's not much you could do in this world to get me to ship people with a big age gap, especially because this girl is barely legal. Like, I cannot stress to you how much she just turned 18. So I could not be a fan of this. Also, the entire book is like that dialogue where he's just like, oh, I want to fuck her tits. Oh, her tits, her tits. He's constantly talking about her boobs. And so even if I was going to romanticize this weird dynamic, I feel like he's not even nice to her. He's genuinely mean to her the entire book. And I'm gonna say a spoiler here now, so if you don't want to hear the spoiler, skip to the next book. But she actually ends up getting pregnant while they're sleeping together, and he yells at her and kicks her out and exiles her from his home. What? Next up, we have Dark Notes by Pam Godwin. I'm calling this one Grooming 101. Like, if you were ever wondering how to prey upon a young girl, I do think that you could read this book and use it as a tutorial. This is about a girl named Ivory. I remember her name being Ivory because she plays the piano, and I thought it was really dumb that she was called Ivory, like Ivory Keys, and then she's playing piano. It's too bad. It's bad. Like, Pamela, why were you doing that? But she actually attends a very fancy performing arts school, and her biggest goal in this life is to go on to play in like the New York Symphony. I don't know, wherever you go and play piano. She wants to go to New York, and there's like a conservatory that she wants to go to, and she has this whole vision of who she's going to be as a musician one day. At the very start of the school year, a new teacher starts, and when he first sees Ivory, he thinks that she is another teacher, and he's like, I want to fuck the shit out of her. But then he finds out that she is a student, but that does not stop him. He very quickly starts grooming her. He keeps her after class, and then it all culminates in a scene where she throws something at him because he makes her really angry, and then he's like, well, I'm either gonna get you in trouble with the principal or you should let me spank you. And that is when the book devolves into a BDSM romance between a late 20s teacher and a 17-year-old girl. She might even be 16. She's pretty young. It's one of those books that's just like, why is this being written? Because it's written for adults. Like, this is an adult romance. It's very sexual. And again, if you're gonna get me on board with age gap, this is not the way. I need these girls to have their frontal lobes fully developed for me to buy into this. Like, if we had a 27-year-old girl and she wanted to get with a 50-year-old man, I'd be like, yeah, girl, fuck him. Like, love that for you. But this book was just so menacing, so nefarious. I did not enjoy it. And at the very end of the book, again, I'm gonna give another spoiler, she actually ends up not going to the conservatory and she stays in her hometown and marries this man. So she throws away her entire life to be with a guy who couldn't find girls to date him his own age. What? Like, this book was so bad. It was so bad. And I am judging you if you like this. I know that in these worst videos, we're supposed to give disclaimers and be like, if I'm hating on your favorite book, I'm really sorry. No, I'm not sorry. And if you thought it couldn't get worse from there, I also read Lords of Pain. Lords of Pain could also be alternatively titled I'm in Pain. This is a college romance about a girl who has sort of like a reverse harem with her stepbrother and his two friends. The book opens with a strong start. There's literally an essay scene the minute that you get into the book, and it is literally at the hands of the people that she eventually has a romance with. And the three main guys, her stepbrother and his two friends, end up at Forsyth University, and they are in charge of this fraternity that is nicknamed the Lords. And the thing about this college, and I don't really understand why this was allowed at this university, they are allowed to have a sex life. Like, every single fraternity on campus hires a girl every school year, and the girls have to sign contracts that basically say that they're willing to be the sex slaves. And I guess what the girls are getting out of this is like social status. There's a huge virginity kink in this book, because the reason that the guys allow Story to become their sex slave is because she drops the bomb that she's still a virgin, because that was one thing they were like really obsessed with when they were like doing weird stuff to her in the beginning of the book. They actually make a whole game where whoever does the most sexual acts with her gets points, and at the end of the year, whoever has the most points gets to have her cherry, as they say in the book. Honestly, I feel like the premise has the makings of being a Hulu docuseries if this was really happening at a college campus. I also just feel like it was really weird because I feel like rape culture is such an issue in colleges, and so I really don't understand why the authors wanted to write this. Also, that's another thing. This was written by two women, not one, but two. So two women looked each other in the eye as they were tippy tapping in Scrivener, and they were like, yeah, write that down, write that down. They were like, oh, what if he did this? Yes, yes, we love that. I love SA. Yes, put it in. I can't. Also, I know that they live in Atlanta, and I also live in Atlanta, and I can't believe I have to share a city with them. And finally, for this section of books that I subjected myself to, I read Credence. In my opinion, this is the worst out of all of these because all the rest are at least labeled as being dark romance. I don't really know if Credence actually is, but the amount of people in my comment section who told me that they had no idea that this was the plot of Credence is staggering. The alternative title I've come up with for this book is Three Grown-Ass Men Groom a Barely Legal Girl. To put it bluntly, the plot of this book is that a girl goes to live with her step-uncle and her step-cousins, and she has a reverse harem with all of them. Her uncle has the hots for her very early on. He is a man that he has to be in like his late 40s. Like, he is older, and then she has got two cousins who also express a lot of interest in her. And I understand that they're all step and they were not raised as family, but they are calling each other uncle and cousin. Like, they are referring to each other that way. And they keep saying we're family. Like, they literally sound like Vin Diesel in the Fast and the Furious. Like, they keep being like, we're family. Her cousin Caleb is the scariest of them all because he repeatedly attacks her sexually, physically, all the things. He attacks her a lot, and I'm gonna give you one guess about who she ends up choosing at the end, because this isn't even a true reverse harem. She kind of goes around with all the different guys, and there is one threesome scene between her and the two cousins, which I get it, she's not related to them, but they are related to each other. That is incest. I can't. It's a really bad book. It's very bad, and I did not enjoy it, and it hurts me a little bit that it has so many 5-star reviews. Like, it's actually frightening. Like, I'm afraid for our generation. Okay, now we're getting into the portion of the video where we're going to talk about books that I actually read because I wanted to read them, and I really genuinely thought that I was going to like them. So these were all read in good faith. I feel like the last books I was ranting about is kind of like I brought that upon myself. These are ones where I'm actually more upset that I read them because I wanted to love them. And I actually did put these in order, so we're going to count down now. So this is number 6. We have Wrong Place, Wrong Time. My alternative title for this is Time Traveling Boy Mom. I feel very misled reading this book because so many booktubers put it on their favorites list last year, and I don't understand why. It's about this woman named Jen, and at the very start of the book, she is just at home chilling. I think it's like near Halloween. She's carving a pumpkin, she's chit-chatting with her husband, and she's waiting for her son to come home because he's been out with friends. And she sees him walking up their drive, and then this other man shows up out of nowhere, and her son stabs him and he dies. And she's like, what the fuck, I just saw my son kill someone. So she like runs outside, and she's like, not my baby boy, like he would never kill anyone, even though she literally just saw him. The boy mom brain rot starts very early on in this book. Like, this entire book is about how Jen is basically in love with her son. Like, I get it, she birthed him, she's allowed to love him, and I don't really care for motherhood, but like the entire book she's just like, my son is just such a baby angel, like he would never kill anyone. And I'm like, but you legitimately watched him kill someone. Like, what do you mean? It turns into a sort of Groundhog Day plot, but it's more like time traveling. And so every time that she wakes up in the past, she's trying to figure out like what she needs to change in order to prevent the stuff happening in the future. But the issue is that Jen is the most incompetent detective I've ever come across in my life. Like, there are so many chapters where she literally accomplishes nothing. Like, she'll talk to like one person and she won't even get answers. She'll be like, hey, what about this thing? And they'll be like, no, I'm not telling you. And she's like, okay. And also, her relationship with her husband is, I cannot. I am so sick of domestic thrillers where the husband is like very suspicious and the wife like can't talk to him and they don't know how to communicate. I'm just like, can we come up with something new? It had my least favorite plot devices ever. I'm actually going to spoil it a little bit right now, so skip ahead if you don't want to be spoiled. But basically this ends up being a drug ring situation, and then the husband ends up being a cop. Like, that's the huge twist, is that the whole book you think that he might be the leader of the drug ring and that's why the son got mixed up in it. But then you find out that he's a police officer, and I'm like, wow, how could you bring so many things that I hate together? Coming in at number 5, we have House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. This was very disappointing for me to put on the list because I loved the first Crescent City book, which was a huge surprise to me because I have been a certified Sarah Janet Maas hater for years. I really did not enjoy ACOTAR or Throne of Glass, and so reading Crescent City was me giving her another chance, and I loved the first book so much. I gave it 5 stars, and I had heard bad things about the sequel, but I was like, no, it's fine, I'm gonna love it. Which, by the way, this book is extremely long, and I was live laugh loving for the first like 75%. Like, I was having a great time. So this leads me to my alternative title for this, which is How to Ruin a Book in One Chapter, because the ending of this book, I cannot. It turned into fan fiction. Honestly, I'm gonna say it because I want to talk spoilers. But basically, at the end of this book, our main character Bryce ends up going through this portal, and when she goes into the portal, she is greeted by Rhysand and Feyre. I can't get away from ACOTAR. It just turned into like an AU fanfic. Like, why are you bringing these characters together? Like, no one wanted this crossover. I feel like if you're a Sarah J. Maas fan, you're actually like, no, I legitimately did want this crossover, but I didn't want it. I feel like she should have thought about me because we both are named Sarah. She's just Sarah with an H. Maybe that's why she's evil and she did this. I hate Feyre. I hate that illiterate bitch, and I don't want to read about her. So I am genuinely not sure if I'm going to pick up the next book, because the whole point of this was that I was like, oh my god, I love this because it has nothing to do with ACOTAR. And Sarah J. Maas was like, you were wrong about that. And the number 4 slot, we have How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. And this is a book that I was so disappointed that I didn't like because everyone loves this. It is a sci-fi anthology that follows a lot of different characters after a pandemic has happened. It's not COVID, it's a different pandemic. Every single story follows different people and how they're affected by this pandemic. So my alternative title for this is What If Every Story Was Worse Than the Last? The only stories that I liked in this book were the first and the second one, and then everything after that was so painful to read. I really did not enjoy this. I did not like the writing style. I did not like any of the characters, and I do tend to be someone who doesn't enjoy anthologies, so I probably shouldn't have picked this up. But the only reason I let myself pick it up is because so many people were like, no, it's not like a normal anthology. Like, there is this thread that goes through all the stories, like all the characters are connected. It's gonna feel more like a novel, and I just could not disagree more. Like, the stories are very thinly connected. It was just bad. This one, I'm actually genuinely sorry if I'm insulting you by saying I don't like it. I can see why someone else would, but I just hated it. Also, I feel like the author was trying too hard to make me cry. And listen, I am a bitch that cries all the fucking time. Like, I cry in my real life. I cry when I'm reading. I cry when my dog does something cute. Like, I cry all the time. So getting me to cry during a book, honestly, is not that hard. It just felt like the book was trying to do cheap things to get me to cry, and that made me hate it even more. Like, there's this one story about a talking pig that everyone in the review says is their favorite story, and I feel like I hated that one the most. It was so stupid. I did not like this book, and it honestly had me questioning, like, do I not like sci-fi? But then I read a different sci-fi after that's gonna end up on my favorites list, and so I realized that I do like sci-fi. I just did not enjoy this one. Coming in at number 3, we have a book that is a huge disappointment to me. Like, it literally makes me so sad to say this, and it is Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead. We read this for my Patreon book club, and I was so excited when we voted on this to read because I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be a slam dunk, we're all gonna love this book. And the first like 25% of this book, I was gaslighting myself into liking it because I was like, there's no way that I'm going to dislike an Ashley Winstead book. I have to love this. And so I spent like a good part of it being like, no, you like this, you like this. No, I don't like this. The alternative title for this book is Twilight with Drugs. I am being being dead serious when I say that this book has so much Twilight in it. Our main character is this girl named Ruth, and she is very oppressed. She has grown up in this small Louisiana town, and her dad is the preacher. So her only solace in this world is when she finds Twilight at her local library, and she becomes very obsessed with Edward. And through a series of events, she ends up becoming really close to this guy named Everett, and he kind of becomes her Edward character. Okay, now I need to get into spoilers because I need you to know this book has to do with drugs. We find out that there is a drug ring in the town. That is what the mystery is. Again, I hate drugs. I hate drugs. I think it's the worst twist. But anyway, when Everett and Ruth are trying to get to the bottom of what's going on in this town, we find out that ever since they were teenagers, Ruth has always thought Everett was different. Like, he runs fast and his skin's a little cold. And I don't know, she just has always thought that there was something about him. Like, there's this one part where she gets bit by a rattlesnake and he sucks the venom out of her leg. So when everyone on my Patreon was reading this in the Discord, everyone kept talking about how there was this notorious chapter 34 or 37, I can't remember exactly, and everybody would put it under the spoiler tag and they'd be like, oh my god, that chapter is so dumb, so dumb, so dumb. So when I got to it, I was like, what could be so bad about this chapter? And let me tell you what happens, Bessies. They come in from the rain after like some crazy thing they've been doing to like get to the bottom of the mystery, and Everett is like talking to Ruth, and he thinks that they're about to confess their love to each other because it's been very like, will they, won't they, ever since they were teenagers. But then Ruth is like, Everett, I know what you are. And he's like, what? And she's like, you run so fast. Your skin's so cold. And it's literally the scene from Twilight. And she legitimately tells him, I think you're a vampire. Like, she's being serious. She thinks he's a vampire. I feel like that's enough said. That's all you need to know about this book. And the number 2 slot, this book brings up so much burning passion in my heart. It makes me upset to even think about it. And that is The Roughest Draft. The alternative title for this one is Should Have Stayed in the Drafts. If you're someone that loves adultery in books, I think you should add this to your TBR because this is all about cheating. So in this book, we have our 2 main characters. They're both authors and they have written a couple of books together over the years. But after their last book, they actually had a falling out and no one knows why. Like, everyone has speculated. People are like, why do these authors hate each other? Like, what happened? Everyone has always thought that they used to be in love when they used to co-write together because they used to write romance books together. Their publishers come a knocking and they're like, hey, we did sign you for a 3-book deal, so you're either going to have to pay to get out of this or you're going to have to write together. So they both have their own reasons, but they decide that they will come together and write it. And so they go to this house in Florida where they last worked together to write this new book. And it is one of those like second chance romances. But what's so disgusting about this book to me is that a huge plot point is that the male character was married the last time they were co-authors together. And what really pisses me the fuck off is that when they meet, he already has a fiance. So he has a lot of opportunities to break up with this other woman in order to be with the main character, and he just doesn't. They meet at a writing retreat and he is just enamored by her and her writing. And it's very clear early on that he loves her. Like, he is obsessed with her. He's like, I need to be around her. And it just gives me the ick because he had a whole ass fiance the entire time he was doing that. And then after they write their first book, he goes on and marries this other woman, even though he's clearly in love with the main character. And so the book is written in present day and then also in the past, so we kind of go between the characters into past memories and current memories, and we try to figure out like what exactly made them have a falling out. I feel like these authors literally were just like, what if we did not care about the sanctity of marriage? Which makes no sense to me because they are literally a married couple. It had me googling, how did you guys meet? Because I was like, I feel like you guys cheated and that's how you got together. But I found out that they're high school sweethearts, so I don't really know what possessed them to write this. I cannot with cheaters. I hope cheaters rot in hell. They should be lined up by a firing squad and killed one by one. I just hate cheaters. I hate them. And finally, in the number 1 slot, this is my most disappointing book of the year. This is the one that hurts me the most to say. Like, I actually am upset. Like, I have tears in my eyes to even tell you this. And that is Happy Place by Emily Henry. I truly do not understand how this ended up on so many girlies' favorites of the year because this is by far the worst Emily Henry that I've ever read in my entire life. My alternative title for this isn't even that creative. I just am calling it The Bad Place because that's how I feel when I think about this book. So this book follows 2 main characters. We have Harriet and Wynne, and they've known each other since they were in college. They're in this really big friend group, and every summer they go to this beach house. And so when they are in college, they fall in love and they start a relationship. And then over the years, they're together for I think like 8 years, and then they break up. But they don't end up telling their friend group because they are afraid of spoiling the magic of going to this beach house. And so they have to fake date while they're at the beach house before they tell their friends. This to me did not have the magic of an Emily Henry book. I feel like what was so special about People We Meet on Vacation is that the characters had so much history and we got every memory of them going on vacation together in the past, and it was just done so well. But in this book, there's so much telling and not enough showing. Like, even her friendship with the girls that she meets in college that gets her interlinked to this friend group is so brushed over. Like in the very beginning, I was like, oh my God, this book is gonna have so much friendship in it. I'm so excited because I love a romance book that has good friendships in it. And then it was like, oh yeah, she became friends with these girls, and then we're just gonna brush over that. Like there were also so many characters, like I had a hard time keeping track of everyone. And I don't know, there was just so many things that would happen off page. Like the whole friend group lives in New York City together at one point, and it's like, and they spent 5 years in New York together and it was a great time. And I'm like, well, what if you like showed me more scenes of them in New York? I thought the pacing was all over the place in this book, and I did not have a good time. And I really did not like Harriet as a main character. Her inability to communicate pissed me the fuck off. I'm like, how are you guys gonna be together for almost a decade, and the reason you break up is because you don't know how to tell each other that you love each other? I mean, I would assume if you've been together for that long that you would know that you love each other, but apparently these idiots don't know that. The only trope that I hate a little bit less than cheating is miscommunication, and this book should be called The Miscommunication Place. Maybe that should be the alternative title. I do have this running theory that I think is scientifically accurate. I am biased because I made it up, but my theory is that you are going to like an Emily Henry book if you relate to the female main character. So for me, I love People We Meet on Vacation because the main character in that book is always afraid that she's too much, like her personality is a lot, and I have always felt like that my whole entire life. Harriet cannot communicate to save her fucking life, and she's very meek and she never knows what she wants. She doesn't know how to say things, and I am so forthcoming. That would literally never be me in a relationship, so I could not relate to her at all. And so my theory is that think about your favorite Emily Henry and like see if you would like that. Another book that I enjoy that other people don't enjoy is Book Lovers, and the main character Nora, and that is very like tough and a little bit of a bitch, and I'm like, I can relate to being a bitch. And so that is my Emily Henry scientific theory, and I think I'm right, and you should listen to me. So let me know what your favorite Emily Henry is down below and if my theory applies. All I'm saying is that if Emily Henry's next book, Funny Story, isn't the best book that I've ever read, you might be hearing me tell you a funny story about how I slashed all of her tires, because I need you to write a better book. Also, Emily Henry, if you're watching this, I don't think you are, but if you are, I'm just kidding. I love you. I will literally kiss you on the mouth, but please don't write a book like Happy Place ever again. Anyway, that brings me to the end of this video. If you made it to the end, feel free to use the knife emoji because all of these books were a knife to the heart. I hated them. Also, let me know in your comments if you've read any of these, if you agree with my opinion, and if any of these are your favorite. I guess I'm a little sorry, a little tiny sorry. Like, so sorry, I'll play the world's smallest violin for you. Thank you all so much for watching. You're all beautiful. Have a nice day.